Hi, welcome. We'll get started this evening. So I'm going to talk about the relationship between the personality and the soul. And the particular diagram that I'm going to talk to comes from the Theosophical teachings. And I guess the reason I really like this diagram is up until meeting this diagram, I sort of had trouble with the big picture and visualizing what was happening in this kind of interplay between my higher self and my lower self, my soul and my personality. And then I came across this diagram and suddenly it all sort of came into a framework, if you like. And ever since I met this diagram, I have been able to almost pin everything, all the other knowledge that I've gained, fitted into this diagram. And so my understanding of it keeps on growing. So let me just share it with you. So I just want to do that. Should be here. Yes. Okay. So this is my version. This is an adapted version of what was originally a more simplified diagram. But as I say, as my kind of understanding grows, I keep adding to the diagram. And I'm quite a right-brained, big picture, visual type of person. So this really fits with the way I understand things. So I like to have a big picture first and then break it down into the detail. That's kind of my learning style. Some people prefer lots of detail that builds up into a big picture. So I apologize if I'll try and meet the needs of both as I'm talking, because it really helps your understanding. So this diagram, I'll begin. Basically, this upper triangle, this blue triangle here, that is representative of your higher self or your soul. And I'll talk about the different aspects of it. But the important thing to realize is that it is vibrating at a frequency that is much higher. Okay, so in the dimension, in this realm of our higher self or our soul, there is no time, no light, and no dimension. And this would explain, for example, why when you go into meditation that works primarily through these two upper aspects here, you often lose an awareness of your physical body. You don't feel particularly physical, and you often you're cutting out light, so you're cutting out the visual to go into that awareness, and you often lose your awareness of time, if you like. So this lower quaternary, or this four aspects of the lower triangle, is representative of your personality, or your ego self is another word that's used for that. So the upward pointing triangle is pointing upward, and the idea is this is energy that lifts up toward light or inspiration or spirit, God, looking for understanding and inspiration. So it's that natural drive in any living being to move toward the light. And the downward pointing triangle is grounded in matter. Okay, now what do I mean by matter? So if we think of all of life as energy, which we might do a whole nother talk on the cosmology of how the universe is organized in terms of energy. But if we think of everything in terms of energy just vibrating at different frequencies, what it means is when we experience something as quite physical, when we can touch it and it feels to be solid or appears to be solid, it's actually just vibrating, energy vibrating at a lower frequency. if you are into quantum physics and you read about quantum physics, you'll come to understand that we are primarily made of space. The total solid matter within us and our atoms and our tissues and everything is tiny. Okay, we appear solid because of the vibration of that energy. So when we start lifting up into these higher realms where the vibration is much higher, things are not solid. And that's why, to get in touch with your higher self, you usually close your eyes, or you go into a realm where it's not physical. You don't, and often we close down the physical senses that are directed out into the physical world. And this is where we get the experience of being very dualistic. You might say that we walk in two worlds. We have this inner world, and we navigate our lives out in the outer world. And we usually talk about having one foot in each world, if you like, or the axiom that says we are in the world but not of it. So the understanding behind this is that our true self is just in the world, but not of it. So not actually that. So if your true self up here is not in the physical world, but we experience ourselves as individual and as physical by the vibrations of this lower part of us, this personality part of us. So what I want to do now, down in the physicality. So this is pointing downward to ground us into physical manifestation. So the idea being that we are souls in essence, and we're down here on earth to learn lessons, to develop capacities and qualities, to heal what we need to heal, to grow spiritually. And it's said that we are here to spiritualize matter. So one of our jobs, our main tasks here, is in our life to bring these higher vibrations down into the lower vibrations, to spiritualize matter, to bring heaven down onto earth, to realize heaven on earth. And I'll talk a bit more about this little triangle, this little Star of David down here a bit later. So this lower triangle is grounded in the energy of the earth. Down here, there are 3 dimensions, and we experience time. So it's quite a different experience down here. Now, this whole diagram relates to the chakras in the body. So, for example, the lower chakras in the body relate to these 4 lower aspects of the personality self. And then you have a beautiful bridge here, which I'm going to talk about, the Antakarana. And then the higher centers relate to the higher triangle. And so I'll bring those in as well. So I want to begin by talking about this lower triangle. And now remember, all of these different aspects of us are not separated like on this diagram. You know, we are who we are, but this is just a diagrammatic way of understanding who we are. So this lower self, or your personality, is what you experience as separate and individual. So down here in matter, we are separate, okay? The lowest part here is our actual physical body. So that's the muscles, the bones, the nerves, the connective tissue. And this is where we experience sensation from information coming into the world and interacting with the world through the 5 senses. It's where we experience activity and movement, and we experience life. We also, this is where we experience our isolation. This is what separates us from other bodies. Okay, this is also the brain is seen in this diagram as part of the physical body, and you'll see that the mind here is not the brain. Okay, so in this schema, if you like, the brain is like a receiving station, like a radio receiver for the understandings of the mind. And that's a whole another talk, if you like, but you could almost think that your mind is in your energy field. Okay, so your mind is capable, it has its own boundaries of understanding, but it's capable of connecting to universal mind. It's capable of connecting to other minds. And that's something we'll develop in time, things like communication mind to mind without having to use the voice. Okay, so we have this physical body. And then surrounding that physical body, which I've talked to you about on a whole talk, is what we call your etheric body or your energy body. And this interpenetrates the physical body. It's responsible for your life force energy, your vitality, that life force energy, that subtle energy that comes in from our environment, comes in through energy centers we call chakras, and vitalizes this whole energy distribution system in our body that gives our physical body life. It gives it movement and life force energy. The prana, it's called, or chi or ki, is fundamental to our health. So the physical body's health is very much determined by the quality of your energy body or your etheric body. And this energy body is where you have an interface with the world, with all other things that are energetic and living. So we share energy with other people depending on what's going on. We connect to the energy of our planet. We connect to solar subtle energy. We connect to plants and to animals. So at an energy level, we can experience that connection. And then also found within this lower personality self is what's called our astral body or our emotional body. And this is where we tend to experience the emotions and feelings. When I say of a lower nature, they tend to be the ones that are unconsciously driving our behaviors. So most of mankind, the astral body is quite reactive. This is where someone will say something and they'll press your button and you're angry. And it comes bubbling out of nowhere. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from? So a lot in our astral body is unconscious. It's almost old issues and traumas and experiences from this lifetime, often pre-verbal, often as a child, and anything you've brought in from previous lifetimes that needs some healing. So the idea is that part of the healing we do, and this is the work of psychotherapists and counselors, is to shine a light of your conscious mind on the aspects of your emotional body that are still unconscious. So take, for example, you might decide, I'm not going to react to that anymore. I'm not going to lose my temper with this person no matter what they do. And you decide that consciously with your frontal cortex. You've made a conscious decision to change your behavior. And you go around to this person's place and you have a meal. And within half an hour, they've got you boiling. It's taking everything you've got not to react. They're pressing every button you've got. And you're really struggling. They're triggering some unhealed emotions, some traumas, some misperceptions that are still unconscious in there, and you are reacting to that. So a lot of the healing work that we do is in this area here. This relates very much to the solar plexus sort of area, to the sacral and the solar plexus chakras. This is where we find things like conditional love, I'll love you if you love me, or I'll love you if you behave the way I expect you to, or the way I think you should. And I won't love you if you don't. It's where we find things like pity. It's where we find obsession or devotion, jealousy, fear, hate, anger, and all the different manifestations of anger. So a lot of humanity are working hard in this area, okay? That's where a lot of our challenges lie. And then we split the mind into two aspects. And the lower mind, or sometimes called the lower manas, is the part of your mind that is very logical and rational. It's what we call the objective or concrete mind. And this is the part of the mind that when you need to make a decision will weigh up the pros and cons, will come to a decisive decision based on those. It sets goals, it has objectives, and it's the part of your mind that sort of helps you operate in this lower world, in the world of matter, if you like. So it's the part of our mind that we train as the intellect, the part of our mind that gets trained in Western schooling, if you like. So it's also the everyday thoughts that run through your mind. And if you've ever watched those thoughts with any degree of detachment, you'll realize that most of them are not yours. A lot of them are not true, and many of them don't serve you. We have a lot of thoughts, everyday thoughts that run through our mind. And if you start looking, you'll find patterns in those thoughts. So this is the sort of it's very difficult often to separate our thoughts and our feelings. So often these two are put together. Okay, it's almost like the thoughts and the emotions, they're so intertwined, they're seen together. And that would be when someone was referring to your ego, they'd be talking about your lower mind and your emotions sort of all mixed up in there, and how you react to the world, and especially the way you see yourself. So we could think of the ego as the part of you that holds on to a definition of who you are that is based on your life experience, your conditioning, what people have said to you. Could be like the sum total of all the roles you play in your life, and we are very defensive in protecting our ego's view of ourself when we're operating down here. So over many lifetimes, and the major challenge of this personality, this whole downward pointing triangle, is to bring all of these four aspects into integration so that they're working with each other, and into coordination. And you imagine all the healing that's in that emotional, all the unhealed issues from lifetimes, all the misperceptions and the ways, the beliefs and the attitudes and ways of thinking that are unhealed. So for much of humanity, many, if not hundreds of lifetimes are spent coordinating and integrating this lower personality self so that it starts to become a useful vehicle for the higher energies to start to come down, for the soul, if you like, a vehicle for the soul. I'll give you an example of what that integration is like. So someone who is quite integrated would do what they say and say what they mean and mean what they say. So there's an integrity between their word and their action and their intention. Their heart and their mind and their actions are aligned. Whereas often we find people will say one thing and they'll do another, or they will intend to do something and do something else. And that's just the normal part of this still becoming integrated. So what we have then, I'm going to talk about this bridge, this rainbow bridge that connects the two now. What happens once that personality vehicle is becoming integrated and coordinated? Increasingly, the person will be opening a beautiful rainbow bridge here. and it's called, some people say the Antakarana, some people say the Antakarana. I'm never sure how you say it, but it's one of those. And the reason it is a rainbow bridge is it's built over many lifetimes when you come down into incarnation along different rays or different color vibrations. So it might be that in this lifetime, one of my main soul directives is to open my heart, and that will have a particular color or vibration to it. Or it might be another person has got to deal with greed, and that has a different color or vibration to bring about this integration and this opening of this bridge between the lower personality self and the higher soul or higher self. And people go through several lifetimes once this bridge starts opening, and I would describe it as the soul starts knocking on the door of the personality. So they might have been quite happily going along in the world of matter, looking for fulfillment and happiness and all of the things that are out there in the world. They might be making lots of money, and they got a nice house and a nice car, and they're looking for the perfect relationship and the perfect, they're looking out there in the world. They're seeking in the world. And then they had a few lifetimes in which suddenly the things in the world are not fulfilling anymore, and they know they're looking for something. Sometimes because it causes inflammation, because this opening of this bridge can cause a real influx of energies, of more energy through the chakras. Often this causes inflammation in the body. So sometimes illness is the soul knocking on the door. Illness can stop you from going out and doing what you were doing in the world, and cause you to be quieter and more reflective, and to start to go inward. So often people will have quite tough lifetimes when the soul starts knocking on the door of the personality and saying, oi, there's more to life than all of this. You're starting to look quite coordinated and integrated down here. It's time to let some higher energies through. And people will experience, you will experience lives that are just one challenge after another. You feel like you're always growing. You just get to a point where you think you've released everything and you've grown as much as you can, and here comes another one. And it's a real like this. You just continually, the soul is testing the personality. Do you have the capacities the soul needs to start to do your soul's work? The soul is encouraging you to step onto your spiritual pathway, to do what we call the path of return back to your essence. And I'll come to that up here. So the Antakarana, there are many practices that help, anything that helps you to heal the emotional and mind issues down here helps to open this bridge. Things like yoga, things like qigong or tai chi, or many other spiritual practices, meditation, help to open this bridge. And you will be drawn to those things when that bridge is starting to open and the soul is starting to knock on the door of the personality and say, come on, I'm in the driving seat now. And if you've read the Bhagavad Gita is basically exactly about that. It's about the higher self, Krishna, coming down and starting to really talk to Arjuna, the personality or the lower self. A beautiful, beautiful story. And wise, one of the wisest teachings that we can connect with. So if I now talk about this upper triangle, and remember, we're not divided into three different parts. We experience it all as one. Okay. So this higher triangle, we have the higher mind, and the higher mind, or the higher manas, is anything where you lift your mind up into what I would call proper thinking. So you're not just letting the usual thoughts that run in your mind control your mind. You are taking control of your mind, and you're lifting it up to purposefully ask some bigger questions, or to study something that really opens your mind, that is concepts. It's like, whoa, I've never even thought about that. Things that really expand your consciousness, really expand your understanding, are working in higher mind. So things like studying the occult classics, studying the ancient wisdoms, any kind of philosophical debate or discussion. I know when I was at university, it must be a real time when you come to this, because one of the things I loved the most about university was the till 4 a.m. discussions on some philosophical mind-blowing issue, where you would just bounce ideas off each other, and you just feel like your mind was just opening. Your body was exhausted and telling you needed to go to sleep, but it was so exciting and so invigorating to expand your mind and come across ideas and people that you'd never have. I loved it. And so that sort of, that philosophical opening, your conscience is up here. So when you start to move into, so if you like, the animal brain or the animal mind, the instinctual mind is down here in the deeper areas of your brainstem, whereas the frontal cortex, the part of our mind that is self-aware, our conscience, is up here. And our conscience is where we look at our behavior and we compare it to an ideal or a right behavior. And we start to, well, yeah, I was true to my conscience. I did what was right. Or no, I didn't. And I feel I've got a guilty conscience. This is where, when we go into meditation, we develop concentration. It's where we find pure reasoning. So not the reasoning of pros and cons and affected by the ego and conditioning down here, but pure reasoning. And this would be, you might experience, especially when scientists are working right on the cusp of our understanding of things, and they're branching into areas that are unknown. I know this is also where you find the imagination. So your capacity, whenever you visualize something, you go up into your higher manas, up into your higher mind. You're using that capacity. This is where we understand symbols intuitively, archetypes, where we go when we chant mantras in meditation. So anything that is symbolic and subjective, so of subtler realms of understanding, whereas this mind down here was more objective, focused on the objects and that you can see in front of you and interact with. So up here is what we would call, I suppose, creative or active intelligence. So you are using your mind. It's not your mind running you, if you like. And you can probably see how meditation really helps us to lift up into this higher mind, because in meditation what we're essentially doing is we're stepping back from the lower mind of the thoughts that run, and we're just watching it. So we're stepping up into our higher mind, detaching and just allowing the lower mind to sort of play out, and we're learning to focus and maintain a position of holding our energy in that higher mind. And that's the first stage of meditation. That's that focus and concentration on the breath that enables you to do that. And then obviously when, like, we're in group meditation, we then move into visualization using our imagination up here. And then I'll talk about how meditation moves into these higher areas as well. So the Buddhi, or the Buddhic part of you, the part of you that is a Buddha, or if you were looking in the Christian tradition, you would say the Christ consciousness, or the part of you, the part of you that is Christ, the Son of God, is your Buddhic nature. So I always think of it as the very higher heart, or the higher aspect of the heart chakra, or the emotions. So very much part of our healing, say, would be to lift emotions that are down here in the solar plexus up into the heart chakra up here. So for example, we might lift conditional love up here into unconditional love. Not I'll love you if you love me, but I'll love you anyway, and I will love you all. It's where we start to develop a love for all of mankind. We develop a love for all beings. So for our planet, for animals, for plants, for the whole of creation. So we talk about the Buddha as the vehicle of spirit, or the vehicle of the Christ, of God, of that amazing love energy that permeates our whole cosmos. So it's associated with the heart chakra, very definitely. And it's also in meditation, the silent observer that you are stepping, that you are focused, you are becoming in meditation, is coming into your Buddhic nature. And that's why many meditations, especially those from the Buddhist tradition, talk about thinking in the heart. So thinking, the higher mind, in the heart, the Buddhic nature. So it's not like thinking in the heart down here at all. It's quite different. It's so when you come across, you think thinking in my heart, it's a higher intelligence. Up here in the Buddhic nature, we see qualities like gratitude. So if you feel gratitude, you're lifting up into your Buddhic nature, or your Buddhi. Forgiveness, unconditional love. This is where we experience compassion, wisdom. Intuition comes from here. Okay, so down here we had the intellect, and up here we have the intuition. So the intellect would come to a decision or a conclusion based on objectively weighing up pros and cons. I suppose more of a scientific or mathematical method with a very highly trained lower mind. Whereas up here would be where you suddenly get up, oh my God, a total understanding of something that just comes in almost completely, you download it. And it's a sense of a knowing that you can't explain. So you might not be able to explain it with this lower mind, but you know inherently on every fiber of your being that it's right and true. And even though you know, words, as we move up here, words get harder. Words can work here in the higher mind, and even in some of the philosophical stuff, we struggle with words. Once we're getting up into Buddhi and Atma, we're really struggling with words. Our communication is on a higher level, a higher vibration than words. Really, we could do with telepathic communication up here. I would just like to download what I'm experiencing so that you can experience it. I just want you to feel this whole experience, and I'll just send it to you, type of thing. So the intuitive is up here. This is very much, the Buddhi is about learning to love wisely and wisdom applied lovingly. And these three upper, if you're familiar with the rays in esoteric psychology, they relate to the first ray, the second ray, and the third ray. So the first ray of will and power, the second ray of love, wisdom, and the third ray of active or creative intelligence. And most people's soul is on one of those rays in this lifetime. And that's a whole nother talk. Maybe I'll get Ted to come and talk a bit about the rays one day if you're interested. So that's your Buddhi. And then we move up into this aspect of our soul or higher self we call Atma. Now, Atma sometimes is called the spiritual ego with a capital E, not to be confused with the ego down here. This is where we experience unity. So down here in the physical, we were isolated, we were separate. Up here in Atma, we come to not just know intellectually from here, but to experience oneness, to experience a connection with all that is. This is the connection that we experience in meditation when we go into that place where our separateness disappears and we just know ourselves as one. So the Atma is also where we connect our small will, if you like. So our will that's down here in the solar plexus lifts up to aspiration and becomes my will be thy will. So it becomes the will of God from the Christian tradition, if you like. It's where we lift in the Buddhic tradition up into our true Buddhic nature. And the idea is that the universal spirit or God or Brahman or whatever you call the all-pervasive, omnipotent, omniscient essence that is, whether you call it energy or love or spirit, whatever that intelligence, that connection, that sense that we don't often have the words for, but if you've ever experienced it, you know what I'm talking about, that sense that you're more than just your individual self. So the idea is that we all have a spark, what they call a monadic ray in Theosophy, or a spark of spirit, or this is our Godhead, or the aspect of God within us, and that comes down and energizes and infuses our soul. So it's like our soul is connected to all that is, to spirit, to God. Our soul is the vehicle of communication with those higher energies. And so what happens over many lifetimes, and what we are here to do, first off, to coordinate and integrate this personality self. And in that process, we'll be opening this bridge. And as that bridge opens and gets freer and wider and more energy can pour into our higher centers, we open the heart chakra, we open the throat chakra, we open the third eye, and eventually full realization, enlightenment, we open the crown. And this is when Atma is fully functioning and open. The person becomes fully realized. The idea is that this higher triangle comes down and infuses the lower triangle, and we get a person that no longer operates as a separate ego-driven personality, but operates as a soul. Okay, so we talk about a soul-infused personality. So it's like the personality has been burnt away, and that vehicle of the personality is totally expressing the soul energy. And this happens gradually, but it also infuses, when this happens, the person is totally coordinated. They know their spiritual path. They know my will be thy will. They know their part in a greater plan. They gain incredible energy. As that soul energy starts coming down through the Antakarana, our etheric body here becomes vitalized. There's a lot more energy. And one of the ways to really open, one of the most effective ways to open this bridge is the Buddhist teachings on harmlessness. Okay, so one of the ways it really opens the energy from the higher centers, from the soul, to come down and infuse the personality, is to be harmless in thought, intention, and deed. Completely harmless, so to no harm to any living thing at all, in the way that you think, in the way the energy, your intention that comes from your heart, and the way that you behave. So, you know, there are people on the planet who do operate that way, and there are people who are walking around as soul-infused personalities, and they will still appear just like a normal person, but they'll have a different energy. And what's going on in terms of they're spending most of their time, they're still in physical matter, but they're living in that higher triangle, but operating through a physical vehicle. So you could say that they are really shining their light out into the world and spiritualizing matter and touching all. Because when, for example, I know we need to meditate soon, when someone operates from an open heart, where their body, heart energy is really flowing, you feel it. You know when you're in their presence. Just before I close, two things I want to say. Once the soul knocks on your door, you can't close the door. You can try, and you might have a few lifetimes. You go, nope, no, 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 no. I am just here. I'm raising my family and I'm making some money. We're not listening. I'm not listening. And the soul will knock louder, and then you'll get illness, and then you'll get all kinds of challenges. The soul is tenacious. So once it's knocking on the door, you might as well open it, because it's just going to get louder and clearer. And once you have embarked upon that path of return, once the soul is starting to infuse the vehicle, there's no turning back. You're on a spiritual path. You know you are. You might as well flow with it, because it's easier if you just accept. You know, maybe people around you are not where you are, and maybe you do feel isolated or alone, because you're going through this big process and this change. But what you do then is you find like-minded people. So you find people who are mostly operating up here and starting to operate up here, and you'll be drawn to them, because like energy attracts like. You'll be drawn to things. You wouldn't be listening to this talk tonight. You wouldn't be at all interested in giving up your Thursday evening to do a group meditation if you weren't already dipping in. You know, this wasn't starting to pour through, if that bridge wasn't opening, because you just wouldn't be interested. You'd be like, why would I do that? You know, wouldn't want to do that. And this also, as you move up into this triangle up here, you're drawn to study, you're drawn to occult classics, you're drawn to meditation, and you're drawn to service, because one of the functions as the Buddhi comes out, you want to serve mankind, you want to make a difference in your own unique way. My will be thy will. So I just want to make that point, that once that process has begun, there's no turning back. So you might as well just go with it. And the other thing that I just wanted to say was that it is an incredible process. And yeah, when I was in Australia, around 95, I was learning meditation with a school over there and doing quite a lot of work with them. And I got to a certain stage in their process where I went to this sort of ceremony, and the man who took the ceremony, all I was told at the time, and I didn't know any of this stuff here, some of the most highly evolved people in the world don't know all this stuff. All I was told was this was a fully realized man. And okay, what's fully realized? Oh, an enlightened person. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to meet an enlightened person. This will be fun. And so I went into the room, and he was just basically introducing me to meditation. And there was him and another man in the room. And I walked into this room, and I had never felt love like it. The whole room and the energy that was emanating from this man was the most incredible love. I could feel it touching my heart. And I had been very ill with a sort of an ME, chronic fatigue type of thing. And I went up to this man, and he just sort of put his hands on me, and he said, there is nothing wrong with you. You're not ill. And I wound up crying, and something shifted, and it opened my heart, because I had never been in the presence of a human being who felt like that. I felt so safe, so loved unconditionally by this person who was a complete stranger and didn't know me at all, but I felt his love. And I got better after that pretty quickly, to be honest. So the miraculous, when you start moving up into this realm, the miraculous becomes normal. Serendipity and coincidence and life flowing and moving in a beautiful way becomes your normal.